Let me start off first, of course, by acknowledging our elder and our prayer Verna and all the elders that are here, and of course to our veterans who carried the flags on the stage and referenced the important role they played in history with our nation. And I spoke about them in British Columbia, and I will speak a little bit later again of the role the veterans played in the revival of our nation. Now, that was a powerful video that really sets the stage of really what we're here to talk about. Since we're talking about Riel, I want to include something here that he said. And this is something I want you to really slowly in your mind soak it in and think about what he was trying to say and what he actually did say. He said, "We must seek to preserve the existence of our own people. We must not, by our own act, allow ourselves to be swamped. If the day comes when that is done, it must be no act of ours." He makes it very clear that we can never allow us to be swamped, and definitely not by others who portray who we are. Clement, our national leader, is still your president. He took a leave of absence because his particular passion of fighting for justice was being attacked. Clement has been a lawyer for many years through residential school. He had a dream to be somebody that can fight and crusade for our nation in different ways. So he took his pathway towards a law degree, and he achieved it. And doing so, he's done some great things in his time and his history. I'll speak a little bit about 1971. I'm going to speak a little bit later about the 1983-85 discussions, First Ministers meeting, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Native Council of Canada. But it's going to be important to recognize who our patriots are. And I'm sure that's each and every one of you in this room and every one of you listening at home. We are about to invade our own history with foreigners that do not belong to us. And we have to look and ask ourselves, what must we do? Do we take the vision of Riel that says we must not be swamped by our own act? Or do we stop those that are about to enter our world and swamp us, and we be lost maybe forever as the years go by and the decades and the centuries go by? As I was saying about Clement, when he decided to become a lawyer, he had a passion to fight for our rights, to preserve and protect who we are, and it's been a hell of a journey. That story you just heard, not only from 1870, from 1816, 1870 to 1885, has always been the hardships the Métis had to display to protect their identity, to protect their family, protect their collectivity. It's been a very hard and turbulent existence of our nation, and many of our people have suffered. Many of our people have paid the price. Many before us have paid that price. If you see in 1870, the reign of terror that came, where women were attacked, raped, beaten, men were killed and abused, that happened. It's not made up stories. You can't make that up, as Mark Leclerc said. You can't. That's what our people went through. Many children died as they had to leave, of course, Manitoba and head west, north, and south. They didn't go east. They came west. And you look at the Red River, the hardships of those families, it wasn't that you can jump in a car and a train or a plane. You had to go with your ox, your cattle, your horses, your Red River cart, and take all of your children. You've seen pictures. We have big families, and a lot of those children did not survive that journey. So our people have fought very hard to preserve who we are and protect who we are, and we've paid a price to that. This country has treated us in a way that tried so hard to assimilate our existence, to remove us of any rightful place in Confederation, to take away that we did not exist but a special interest group of people out in the West that had no rights. Unfortunately, we fought to support the First Nations because we were close to our families, our mothers. And that's something that we are a maternal nation. We can never forget that. That's who we are. But let's look at history, what happened to us. We needed to find a way to fight to defend ourselves again. And after 1885, we disappear in history. Look at the history books. Find yourself, your stories, your family, anywhere. You will not find it after Batoche. Because this country was attempting to rid us of our very existence. Because we were brave enough, bold enough, strong enough, that we were willing to sacrifice the ultimate sacrifice, our lives if necessary, to go to war to defend our families and our community and our land and our culture. This story is not in the East. This story didn't happen nowhere in the East. It all happened in the West. That's where the Métis Nation you see hanging in the walls, hanging outside your yards at times in the flags, hanging in all of our meetings today, the infinity flag, is because we stood firm. We were going to defend ourselves at all costs. And if we had to pay the price, we were willing to pay that price. So you look at history after Batoche, the day we disappear, but we come back. Because who brings us back is the patriots. The people have always kept our culture hidden because we had to hide our existence because of racism and discrimination. And the punishment we would hear that would happen to our families for trying to say who they were. As some of our veterans have said, they told us we're nothing but a half-breed. That's all we are. Nothing more. At one time, my friends, we were called the flower-beaded people because they had no name for us in the early 1800s. We were called country born. We were called barboulet, burnt wood, color of our skin. They didn't know what to call us, but we are a new nation forming in the West. One time they called us the bastard of the plains because our fathers left us and our Indian mothers kept us. But with that came a nation within a short span, a culture, a music, an identity, and a very powerful identity, one that everybody miscalculated in Canada. Canada miscalculated us, thinking they could just walk right over us, not realizing we became strong buffalo hunters to preserve our families, our cultures, and we became very disciplined in our governments and our protection of who we are. We fought with the Sioux to protect our trade. We fought again with all those who would try to take away our rights, whether it's in the courts or whether it's by military. But one of the things I do know, history has shown us, that no one could ever get rid of us because we were too smart for them. And that is something that people don't realize. Our people had picnics, our people had gatherings, our people had certain private places that they would meet, and people would get together to support our culture and our music and our dance, and nobody can actually take that from us. And as you heard Oliver play the fiddle this morning, just think for a second. You cannot write that music. Why? Because it was created by us through sound, through our way of celebrating ourselves. You cannot write Métis music. You can't. The notes don't allow you. So we are a unique people, a unique nation, people that need to be respected of who we are. We must defend that at all costs. And after the disappearance of 50 years, guess who revives us? The patriots, the veterans that come home. They start to stand up and they already went through hell and back. But now they needed to stand up more braver in a country that again did not even accept them upon their return. And they went to fight for a country that's aided the nation in many ways. Because you think about something, and I'll give you an example. Second World War in 1939. Our people went in droves. But in 1939, they still went to the community where Vera comes from, St. Madeleine. They went and shot all our dogs and burnt our school and our church and every house that we lived in for cattle. In this country we call Canada that we love, we helped build. 1939, not 1839. This happened in many people's age that's here today who are still alive. In 1939, this country allowed our entire village to be burnt so we can put room for cows to pasture, to eat, and get fatter. Well, our people suffered, and our people had to find the root allowance, as you heard Senator Norris speak on. The root allowance people. But it was the veterans who continue to still advocate upon the return, and the formation of our government starting to come out and speak. And it's the patriots that stood up to fight for who we are. And as you look at Clement, as I said, I want to speak a little bit about Clement, because it's important for me to tell that story, because it all connects to where we are today. It connects to other people in this room, other patriots that are my close friends that may have shifted ways. But I know in their heart of hearts, they believe in the nation. And it must be time to stand up to that nation. Because, for example, Clement becoming a lawyer to residential school was not an easy task. There is pain in this man's heart still to this day to residential school. But it did not stop him from pursuing a pathway towards how he can contribute to our nation, how he can become a lawyer, how he can fight for the rights of the people. That is something people must remember. He may not we look at great leaders, Harry Daniels, Jimmy Sinclair. Manitoba, we had Yvon Dumont, who actually led the land claims in our fight back in that era. John Morrisseau. We had some very powerful, Edward Ed. Senator Ed was a powerful, Nora knows him very well. A fighter, ready to pound the tables and go to fight for the nation, to protect it, at all costs, including the loss of anything that they would defend clearly. One of the greatest speeches I heard as a young man in 1985 was Jimmy Sinclair from Saskatchewan. Well, I didn't know Jimmy very well, but I'll tell you, I heard him speak. And not scripted, he took a strip out of nearly every premier in that house, including the Prime Minister. And guess what happened to him upon his return into Saskatchewan? All his funding was cut as soon as he returned home, because he put them to task and he challenged them. So we need at times to stand up for those we know are doing wrong to our people. We must defend them at all costs. So when we have now developed our positioning of where we stand, we must not forget those that have fought before us and those that are going to fight in the future for us. And that's what Nora was talking about, the next generation. And some of them are in this room today, and some of them will be listening at home. But I want to go back before I go to the issue of why we're here, because it connects to the whole process. As Clement became a lawyer, I remember in Manitoba why I have always supported him, as I supported Gerald Morin when he was president, because he had a heart to fight for the Métis Nation and to protect the Métis Nation when he was president. But I'll tell you something very clear. When Clement was still fighting, whether it's in Saskatchewan, starting as Jimmy D would say the 1994 land claim in the north, trying to pursue to protect of the nation of Saskatchewan, our nation. There's only one Métis Nation, always, never let no one tell you different. Only one Métis Nation, always will be. And when they were out there trying to fight for the rights of our people in the trenches with no money, and I remember Clement coming to Manitoba and we asked him to come and help us. And when he was sleeping in a van and getting paid through bologna sandwiches and gas to come out and fight because nobody had the money to pay him, he came. You must never forget that about our patriots. Whether it's Senator Head, Senator Nora Cummings, all of these people that have fought for a cause and a purpose to protect our nation. We must never forget that, ever. And our young generation must understand why we do what we do, why we fight to protect our identity and where we belong in this, what we call Confederation. But it's important to recognize, in order to get there, let's talk a little bit about history while we're here. The identity theft that's about to take place in this country, where the issue of who we are has been long sought, and we always knew who we are, but we had to clearly start defining that definition so we can lock it into the system and no one can ever take it from us. Because Clement and Jimmy and Sinclair, and I'm talking about Harry Daniels and the rest, and Yvon Dumont, all of them back in the era started, in fact, creating what is called Native Council of Canada. Remember the word Native, Aboriginal, and Indigenous, right? But the word Native was used at that era in 1971. It was the Three Prairies that founded NACC, and Clement was one of them. And you'll see that in that era, the Three Prairies just wanted to formulate a voice for the nation because the veterans already pumped them up. The veterans came and stood up and fought for them and said, now it's your turn, I pass the torch to you. So they took that torch. They created Native Council of Canada so our people can have a voice in this country. The Constitution in Section 35 did not include Métis yet. We were there in 1870 under the Manitoba Act, but we were not clearly defined in Section 35 in 1971. People can't forget that history of why we fought so hard to get where we are today in the Constitution. And we look back at the formation of that. The country of Canada said, well, you can't just be alone. There's a bunch of non-status out there, off-reserve people, that need to go through a process, and they'll become part of the NECC. It didn't take long, 10 years. We were outnumbered 3 to 10. 10 different organizations that swamped in, and they were part of NECC. And then the real message was shown to us in the 1980s. When we were sitting at the table about to negotiate the very essence of the Constitution today, Section 35, when we were to take our seats at that table, the First Nations, the non-status who dominated NECC now, we had 2 seats that we were going to be sitting in to defend the Métis rights and to damn well demand that Section 35 be changed to include the Métis, because it only had First Indian and Inuit inside that Constitution, which guides this country today, which has achieved us the greatest rights we've ever won because of that day. But just imagine for a second what happened to us. Clement and them were removed from the table, and the First Nations took the seats and say, NECC is taking those seats. The First Nations are going to have those seats, and the Métis agenda was off the table. But it was the wisdom of our leaders who then said, okay then, if that's what you want to do, we'll create the Métis National Council. We'll now finally go to our own place where we should have been. We weren't ready, but now we're ready. So our people, our leaders, demanded, if necessary, to even take Pierre Elliott Trudeau to court if they continued that First Ministers' Conference without the voice of the Métis. And their strategy worked. We got 2 seats. The Métis National Council was formed to defend the nation, and the only one nation that existed in the homeland. And that, my friends, history has shown some of the greatest speeches by Harry I know him as my good friend Harry the Dog, Daniels. And maybe because he's a dog, because he bit something he never let go of, maybe that's why he called him a dog, I don't know. But if you look at history, the role that they played, these leaders of the past, they changed the very essence of the Constitution today that you can say has changed your lives into the future. We've waited 200 years to get where we are today. 200 years and more. And we're finally getting our place in Confederation. We're finally finding our home. We're finding where we belong. And we're finding that we can finally make changes to our people and to the next generation. We're finding our ability. We finally have housing. We finally have education. We finally have youth programs. We find our own, not somebody else's, our own. It states the first time in a budget, the Métis Nation. And that is something we must respect, something we must demand. And we cannot allow anybody to steal that from us. Never, ever should we allow. If people like me, I'm 60 now, the day will come when I will be like Nora, drifting off to my little private area I want to be in, where I have some privacy, and live my life to where it'll take me. The good Lord will hopefully last me longer than 70. So anyways, but let's hope that happens. But there'll have to be other patriots that come behind us that need to fight this cause, because it's not the last time. We got invaded in 1870, where they tried to destroy us. And we paid the price in Manitoba, as I told you the story, the Reign of Terror. In 1885, we paid an even greater price again, where we fought, and we even ran out of bullets, and we were melting any metal we can find to create bullets. And the story of one elderly man hidden in a firing pit, where he said, we got to leave, we have no more bullets, we got to leave, we got to move, or they're going to kill us all. And he said, I got a few more bullets, I'm staying to take one more down. And of course, they kill him in his pit. But that is the bravery of our diehards, of the patriots of our nation, that would fight to defend who we are. And Riel gave the ultimate sacrifice. Let's understand this, Riel got away. He was in the United States already. And he came back to defend us again and said, if I can go to the court, tell the Canadians what we fought for, why we did what we are, who we are, people will listen. But no, they stage a coup. Look at history, my friends. I'm not making this up. He never went to trial in Canada. He went to trial, which is called Regina, which is not part of Canada. It was part of Canada after in the 1900s. But in 1885, it was the Northwest Territories. And if he was charged for treason, he should have went to trial in Manitoba, which is part of Canada. But guess what? If they would allow him to go to trial where he was charged, and under Canadian law, charged for treason, you go to prison. But if he came to the Northwest Territories, where they followed old English law, they just, they didn't care about law, they just adopted old English law because they had to create laws. So they just borrowed it from England. And in there, treason said, if you're charged with treason, then the decision is by execution. That's why they took him there. Two options: make him crazy, say that he's insane, or kill him, murder him. We must silence that voice of the people of the Métis Nation. We must silence him because he's raising too much of an issue in this country, and the only way if we silence him, it may go away. But look at what he did. It didn't go away. We're back. We're back stronger than they've ever been in our history. So we can't, and why this meeting is so essential is now I'm going to give you the details. We've been pushing very hard since 2002, as we formed, it took us decades to get where we were, to clearly start to define the definition of who we are. And that definition was adopted by all 5 provinces. That this is the definition we will abide with because this is who we are. Our homeland, our genealogy will connect us to our homeland, to the river settlement, to all of the people, because there was census done. The script of the prairies, all of those things that were essential to our identity and the culture of our people. That definition was created to be bought and followed by everyone. Everybody passed it and put it in their constitutions. Everybody is abiding to it, from Manitoba West, except Ontario. Ontario has never followed that definition for some reason or another. And now we know why. We know why because they have been outnumbered by the Métis. They claim to be the nation that we are. They're not us. And I'll get you some detail on that today in this conference, and I'll speak on it in a little while. But when they look at how they were able to achieve it, when the people said enough is enough, we've been waiting too damn long, you're holding us back, you're holding us as we try to move forward in this country and finding ourselves in confederation, and we must clean up our house before we make the next moves to negotiate our place in confederation. Ontario decided not to follow those rules. So our people said it's enough is enough. Manitoba and Saskatchewan stood together, and we passed a resolution, making it very clear to a Métis Nation of Ontario, you must abide by this. We will review your registry, and we will give you 1 year to fix your problem you're creating for us. We will no longer allow it because you're watering down our nation, you're tainting our identity, and you're trying to damn well destroy our future, and we're not going to allow it to happen. That's our people's decision, not mine. Gerald made such a passionate speech that day, making it very clear that these are not our people. They are not our nation. They are different people. And that's something we must not forget because it's so true. And when we look at what they did with 1 year, then it's very clear in the decision of the Assembly that we will hold back, and first the Assembly agreed and supported suspension, but they said we'll give them 1 year to fix their house. And we will send a team to look at the registry, which we did, but they wouldn't let us in. Clement worked on that diligently, trying to get us to go look at the registry to make sure they're following the 2002 definition. They would not let us in. In fact, they just mocked at it and shut the door and said, we don't have to talk to you, MNC. Because now we have the support of Alberta President and we got the support of Saskatchewan President. So we don't have to talk to no one. They are so wrong. So wrong. A president's only one vote like me. I'm only one vote. In fact, I don't even vote in my cabinet. So let's make it very clear. Presidents are not kings. We're presidents. So when we moved forward on this agenda, and we started to challenge Ontario, and they went in the media and they said to us first, and I want to say something to this entire crowd, when they went after the Métis National Council, said it's dysfunctional, financial, I can't say the word, financial, my accent, say that word.
Irregularities.
Okay, good. So, my accent doesn't let me say it. But when they said all those things, but let me tell you what was happening. There was disgruntled employees that left the MNC. While we're negotiating the budget of that negotiated 2-point-something billion for our people, there was a threat made that they would destroy MNC and financially hurt us because of disgruntledness. Not because right or wrong, because somebody was very disgruntled. And they went to the RCMP, they went to the government and saying, you need to look at the MNC's financials. There's problems there. I promise you there's problems there. What they were trying to do is create this negative image in the media so government would stop negotiating with us and say, well, wait a second, you guys got a problem. We can't negotiate anything into the budget. It didn't work. We continued to influence the government that let's do the audit. Let's see what you're talking about. But guess what? These disgruntled employees met Margaret Froh. They met with Audrey Patra. And they had an obligation to the Métis National Council Board of Governors to bring those issues to us and tell us what the hell this person was trying to do. They didn't. In fact, they worked to support this attempt to hurt the Métis National Council. And now we know why. Now we know what they're doing. It all comes together like a puzzle now. You can see it come, all the pieces falling together. They supported that disgruntled employee, and I'll tell you how embarrassing they will be either next week or the week after. Probably next week when we come out with a statement. Ernst & Young has completed their audit, and let me tell you, there's not 1 cent missing or 1 cent spent wrong. Not 1 penny. And that's what I think Riel was trying to warn us about. It can't happen from inside. It cannot happen from inside. It could be the worst thing to happen, that we be swamped from inside. So we are about to now look at where we're going. So they said, we want a meeting. We demand a meeting. And I called this meeting January 27th, March 9 and 10. Let's have a public meeting. Let our people hear. Let them come. Let our leaders from the locals come. Let not only the board of directors or board of governors sitting at the table, let the people hear. Let's debate Ontario once and for all in a public so everybody can see. But they decided not to come. They went somewhere else. In fact, my friends, right now they're probably watching us in Gatineau, Quebec, because that's where they're meeting. They took their boards out there, not so their boards can't hear what's going on. They took their boards away from the nation that they should be accountable to the people they should be accountable to. There is so much at stake, my friends. If you look at what Ontario has done and how they crafted the wording, 6 new historical communities. How can you say 6 new historical communities? You're just changing history or making new history? 6 new historical communities? But you're going to hear from experts today, because we have done a study on these 6 historical communities with experts, genealogist expert, historian expert, and have looked at every aspect of it, and you aren't going to be shocked because you all know already they're not our people. And clearly the evidence will show they're not our people. They're so desperate to make up any connection to anything to claim that they're Métis. The only Métis we have is in Kenora, Rainy River, Fort Francis. That's our people, and they're here today. They're part of our homeland, and we will protect them no matter what. That's our homeland, and we will defend them. So let me say this, my friends. As Dwayne has said, you only got 15 minutes. We are at a time in our history where this will be judged one day. This particular day, this meeting, it'll be judged. People will look back on this day. And I hope to hell that people will look back and be so proud of every one of you in this room and everyone at home listening, that you are part of history 20 years from now. 50 years from now. Because when they look back, this will be the time in our history where it was the most dangerous of all. At least in 1870, we knew our enemy. They were dressed in uniforms. We knew what color uniforms they were coming in. 1885, we knew our enemy. We knew exactly how they were dressed, what uniforms they were wearing. But this third invasion is the most dangerous of all, because we don't know who they are and why are they out there and where are they coming from. But we do know that the facts are the facts, and all of us in this room know there's no connection. And I want to make something clear, because they were told this in British Columbia. Margaret Fro went there a couple of days ago. She won't come here, but she went over there to British Columbia to try to cause harm to the president and this maybe cause a fraction in British Columbia, but that did not happen. They're here today. But they said to British Columbia, be careful, because what's happening here to me in Ontario, where they're saying now the people outside the map don't have rights, that you will have the same thing happen to you, which is so wrong, so false. Once you are a member of the Métis Nation and you prove your genealogy, you prove your connection to Homeland, you could go damn well to Germany and your rights will still be protected in Manitoba and the West. You do not lose your rights. That is so false. Your rights stay with you no matter where you go. Whether you go east, you go south, you go overseas, the Métis Nation rights will always be with you. Always. You may not be able to practice hunting in Germany, but you can come home and they'll be waiting for you when you come back. So we need to look at how it is that we need to move forward on. So one of the guys that the system is using is to look at how they're moving forward on their agenda. Quintel actually is here. I don't know if he's speaking later. But Quintel actually is part of the MNA at one time, ran for president. They're saying now he's disgruntled. But that's not the case, and he'll explain to you. But I'll tell you something what happened and why the Métis Nation Council is so important. Because back in 2008, Alberta at a meeting when they were running for a president, at a meeting at the Métis National Council where every provincially elected leader is elected by the grassroots of our democracy, and we have probably the most democratic system in all of Canada and maybe all over the world, because no one is as democratic as the Métis Nation, right from the days of the electing the captain every morning for the hunt, right to the days of running our governments. To this day, we're the most democratic people in the country. And what happened is that provincial elected people, elected by the people to sit at the Métis National Council to vote on the future of our nation, Patra did not like what was happening. She did not like that those people on her board may not be listening to her direction. They felt that they had their own views, and their people told them their own views, where they needed to go. So what she did, and this is a proven fact, what she did, she tried to remove 7 of her own elected people and not allow them to vote and bring 7 of her own. That cannot happen in democracy. It cannot happen if the people elect that. You cannot allow it to happen. The Métis National Council had to go to court with the Federation, MMF, to stop that and protect the democracy of our nation, and we won in court. She was not allowed to remove her people that were duly elected by the people. So what happened? She created a judicial body. And then what happens to those people that are running now? One of them ran against her as president, almost won. He was vice president. And then there's another one, in fact, that ran against not supporting her. They were banned for 6 years, 5 to 6 years. No longer allowed to run in politics in Alberta. How in the hell can you do that to a people of democracy, that you can ban them, they can never run against you? That is not a way of our nation, never been since the 1800s and forward. But guess what happened? In order to win that battle, this is important, and I said this, Clement and I talked about this, and many others spoke about this. She went to court against those people because they went to court saying, you can't ban us, we're elected by the people. Cripe, you did that to Riel back when he was MP for 3 times, you wouldn't let him take his seat. Now you're damn well doing it here, repeating what the government did to our people. So those people went to court to defend themselves. Guess how she beat them in court? It's a proven fact, it's law. She said, we're a club, not a government. We could decide who belongs to our club. So these people are no longer part of our club. And they won. The judge said, okay, you're a club. You can choose who belongs to your club, your association. And that's a proven fact. It went to court. and was revisited in 2016, because we said in 2008 it's going to come back to haunt our nation. Somewhere, someplace, somebody's going to get hit with this court case. Either it's an MMF is going to get hit, Saskatchewan, BC, somebody is going to pay the price for this unbelievable position that we are a club. We're not a club, we're a government and a nation. And she went, and the mistake she made is this. On a case, this is 2016, am I correct, Ron? The court ruled again, and they brought back that old case of her argument. And they said, at that time you said you're a club and association. And at that time the judgment was very clear. If that's what you are, then you cannot stop others from beginning to organize themselves to defend Métis people in this province. So guess what? It's exactly what's happening in Alberta now. Because if she's a club and only certain few can grow, and do you know that they don't even have one minister in Alberta? Not one. They don't have Minister of Health, Minister of Finance. Every one of us have ministers, except them. Everything has to go through the president. It's completely different. We've never seen it. I've never seen it in all my 22 years as being president. It's completely different. So when you talk about, do they respect governance? Well, obviously something's wrong with that picture if they say they do. Because how can they be negotiating self-government right now if that's the model they're following? You cannot have dictatorship. You cannot have, as I said, no kings or queens. This is about democracy of presidents and leaders of the people, the grassroots, where the voice is given to us to defend them, not kings and queens. So when they sign these so-called self-government documents, people should have asked the question, why is the MMF not signing this thing? Why? MMF is guaranteed not here to pat my back and brag, but we are the biggest and most powerful government of our nation. We have the most advancement of our nation. We have a land claim negotiation that's happening right now. It took us 32 years in the court. And we are negotiating the biggest deal in our entire history. And I know one day you're going to come knocking on our door. I know that. We know you're coming. The question is when. Wait till I get the deal first. Because I know people are going to come to say, my descendants come from the Red River, so I'm entitled to some of your settlement. I know it's going to be happening to us. So we'll wait for that day to come, but we're negotiating one of the biggest deals in our history. And it's not in the millions, my friends, it's in the multi-billions. So we're moving towards that, and we're moving great headway. But we would not sign the document, especially on two major principles. But there's other issues. And you'll hear some about that today, why we're not signing. But let me say this, why MMF would not sign. Because one of the actual facts of it, you have to state that you're not a government. You can assert you're a government, but the government is not going to say, I recognize you as a government. Not until legislation, which is years down the road. So if you think about the calculation of this, during the most tight race, electoral race that was happening in this country, whether liberals were going to get in who believe in reconciliation or the conservatives who did not. And imagine for a second the conservatives won and you signed a piece of paper saying you're nothing but an organization, a special interest group. Guess what they would have done to you? They would have tore you apart, and you would have been going back 20 years, 30 years. To lessen yourself to sign a paper to let government tell you you're not a government is ridiculous. That cannot happen. You can say all you want, but if they don't want to acknowledge it, then in fact, I'll tell you in hours. I already made it clear to Canada, there's no way in hell I will sign a paper unless you tell me openly that you agree and admit that I am a government. You sign your name, and I'll sign mine beside yours. So that is where we're going. But there's something even more dangerous, especially the young generation that's here. I said it's going to catch you up. It's going to come back to haunt you. We'll be long dead and gone by the time the takeover comes over. It's coming, and it'll come fast. In Quebec alone, in the East Coast, there was no Métis. In the 80s, they started calling themselves Métis because we won in the Constitution. And again, we thank those great leaders that passed who put us in the Constitution and made sure that Métis were included. All of a sudden, East Coast started calling themselves Métis, trying to go to court. But guess what? In that short span, 10, 15, 20 years, there's over 200,000 people saying they're from Quebec to East Coast that are Métis. That's not counting what Ontario is saying. One community alone, I think it was Barrie or Sarnia, said within 10 years we'll have 500,000 members. 10 years. Imagine that for a second. There's only 400,000 of us potentially in Western Canada. And if they can say that they can have over 500,000, 1 million and more, guess what's going to happen to you? And guess what's going to happen to Saskatchewan? Guess what's going to happen to Alberta, British Columbia? They're going to swamp you complete. And that 1971 is going to come back to haunt us. And they're going to say the non-status. And when they say today, and what is quite interesting is we pushed these two presidents harder to say, how in the hell, after everything that's in there, can you support Ontario to say that their people are Métis? First, they were defending it. We looked at the registries. Both Patra and McCallum said, we went and looked at the registries, and there's nothing wrong with them. They're okay. Oh, you pushed them even harder now. And all of a sudden, well, in their own fact sheet, Ontario admits that they're not all the Métis Nation. So all of a sudden, there's no more all 100% Métis Nation. All of a sudden, now they're dwindling. Well, some of them aren't Métis Nation citizens. They're called Section 35 rights holders. So what? There's Section 35 rights holders all over Canada. But it has nothing to do with us. We have our own Section 35 rights. That's not ours. Let them have their Section 35. Let them go to court. Let them struggle as we did. Let them fight as long as we did. And to find their place in Confederation, that's their problem. So let's not we have to inherit somebody else's problem. So as we push these leaders harder, all of a sudden, the tune is changing. I had a recent letter from McCallum as the president, and I think that was a perfect letter for me to finally see the light even more clear so I can speak on it. When he said all of a sudden that we don't support lateral violence that you're doing, David, basically, that you're fighting against these people. That's not the way of the Métis people. In fact, these are the voyageur Métis people. Who in the hell is the voyageur Métis people? It's not us, you know, not us. So when you start raising that type of language, my friends, it's all a guise. It's a way to twist the identity and say, come on, use your hearts. You got to take care of these people. You got to help them until they take over and kick your ass later. That's what is going to really happen. So let's look at it from that process. I apologize to any listener out there, young kid, I use the word ASS. But it it tells me this. We cannot be fooled. We should have learned our lesson in the 70s and 80s, early 80s, when they almost tried to rid us of existence by those that we bought in. And now by us saying, it is up to us to take care of them. It's up to us to bend over and say yes. It's up to us to say, okay, we're going to bring you into our family. How in the hell would we risk everything we've done, how far we've gotten, how far yet we are going to go, so we can make sure the next generation doesn't have this struggle? If you look at education, for example, we have now $9 million every year forever for education. And that's for post-secondary education, that's for K-12, and that's $9 million, just my province. Your province has close to $9 million too. And Alberta has 9. Altogether, we're talking monstrous money forever. We never had that in our history. Now we're fighting for health. We're fighting for devolution of child and family services. And we're going to risk it by bringing, and it's our responsibility to worry about the Algonquins and the Ojibways. Because what you're going to hear from the people here today, from the experts, not from me, from the experts, you're going to hear the facts. The facts are going to show you that these people that they claim are Métis, or voyageur Métis now, if new name they're giving them, that the voyageur Métis that belong to us somehow, they're going to hear that they're not us. They're actually directly connected to Algonquins and to the Ojibways. And it's proven in fact today. So you'll hear the experts speak. So we did this study. We wanted to show and wait it out when the day comes. And now we flush them even further that there is this potential existence of a people, a different people. And they are maybe Section 35, they are non-status, but they're not us. And we cannot open those doors, because if we ever open them, we may never be able to shut them. And if everything we've done, I've done, you've done in this room, everything the veterans have done, every elder has done in this room to fight for our people, to be proud of our nation, to go to functions, cultural events, to keep on promoting our existence, to potentially lose it all. It reminds me of a video I saw where in the past when somebody went to the east to look at potential partnership, when they were doing a drum and yodeling. That's not us. So we do not have that. We have our own beautiful Métis music, the fiddle, which nobody can replace and nobody can copy because it's our music. So when you look at our culture, we cannot risk it. It is too dangerous to take that potential of finding it out. So my friends, we're at a pivotal time in our history. And I mean everything I say. I've been at this game fighting for Métis rights since I was 18, 19 years old. I'm now 60 years old. I've been at this. I've never given up the cause to fight for my people and never will. But if you look at what we're about to face, this is the most dangerous time in our history. And if we don't take the words of Riel himself, who had great vision and aspiration, maybe because of his strong religious beliefs, which I did. No matter where I travel in the world, I stop at a church and pray. I always pray for my little Métis nation. This morning I prayed before I came here and asked for guidance and asked that I be given the right words to tell you the story so you can understand understand the challenge we all face. Understand why it is we must stand up to defend. Understand why we must stand up to fight for our people in our community and our province, our territory, which we have 3 provinces and British Columbia, which is part of our nation and part of Ontario. We must defend that homeland. We must work vigorously to support each other. We must stand up together. We must not let those come in to fool us. Let's not let that sheep come in, and all of a sudden, as you unravel the sheep wool off, you see a wolf standing there before you. We can't let that happen. And Riel said to us then, don't let yourself get swamped from inside and then somebody take over. So I'm going to close off with this statement here, and this is again a Riel. And I think about it this way because, you know, I look at history, and I actually, as I said, I'm a very strong religious believer. I believe there's a reason for everything. I believe there's a purpose for everything. And I believe the good Lord put us all here for a purpose, and there's a mission for each and every one of us to do. And I'm not here to carry a Bible and start preaching to you, but I truly in my heart of hearts believe that because everything has happened in my life. When I pray, things have come the right way. And I see that happening in our families and our communities. We're very strong in that side of our history. But Riel said this when they put a $5,000 bounty on his head and he had to go to the United States. And he prayed for his little Métis nation again. And he said this, pray that God may preserve the little Métis nation and cause it to grow, and remain faithful to its mission. During the 5 years that I must pass in exile, I have only this to say to the Métis, remain Métis, become more Métis than ever. That is something that you must take in your heart, become more Métis than ever. Let no one steal your identity. Let no one take away what we've been able to achieve and grow. We are the Métis nation, and let's damn well be proud of it, and let's protect it with everything we've got. Riel gave his life. If we have to, we'll give ours. So let's protect our nation.